What's up, everyone? We're back with another action-packed 1-2 game from Jersey City. I had amazing reads this session, so this is going to be an awesome one. Before we go further, I put a lot of effort into these videos, so I would really appreciate if you could subscribe and like. That would help me a lot. Now to the session. We buy in for 400, and first hand of the section, we're going to be looking at the beautiful Jack 10 of spades. Middle position opens to $10, the cutoff player calls. I'm going to pick the aggressor route and go for a 3-bet 240. Both players make the call and we go to a flop of ace 4-9. The action checks to me and I'm going to check this one back as ace high dry flops. We use a check or overbet strategy. The turn is another 9, pairing the board. The middle position player now leads for $10, the cutoff gets out of the way and we make the call. River comes a 10 of diamonds and the middle position player checks now. Given the action, I rarely think MP has an ace, and he'd arrive here with a lot of junk like middle pair in a straight draw, middling pocket pairs, or things of that nature. To get a fold from those hands, I don't need to go too big, and if he has an ace, he's probably calling up a pot-sized bet anyways, so I bet 50 to target hands that I can get an easy fold from. He doesn't think too much before calling and shows us the bad news. He shows ace 4 and he plopped 2 pair that got counterfeited on the turn, but it's an easy call for him. Next stand, we're going to look at king queen offsuit from the big blind. There are a couple of limpers and the small blind raises to $10. This time, I just call because the small blind is a very neat player that would not raise anything worse than what we have. The button limper calls and we go 3 ways into the flop of 9-8-3 2 clubs. Action checks around and the turn is now the king of clubs. Small blind leads $15 and we obviously call very quickly with our top pair. The button player gets out of the way and now the river comes the 4 of hearts. Small blind now announces all in. I mean, yeah, he's all in for about 150 and I don't really want to make this call. Get shown like ace king, aces, or any better hand. I've never seen a bluff for this big size, so I can just lay my hand down in this pot. It might look tight, but let me know in the comments if this was a good laydown or I was just giving too much credit to this opponent. Very next hand, we're dealt a pineapple bomb pot, and we look no other than black rockets in the straddle. It feels amazing to get the best hand created last to act. First act player calls, button calls, the small blind calls, big blind checks, and we're going to raise to 25. The button player and the small blind call and we go 3 ways into the flop of queen 5-4 rainbow. I continue for of a size of $40 and button player now decides to go all in for about $70 and we obviously beat him into the pot. He shows king queen and we end up being good for both runouts. Always feels great to win hands like these. Next up, we're in the button with 8-6 of spades and we raise to $10. Only the big blind player calls and we go to a flop of jack 9-6. I continue for $5. The big blind player calls without thinking too much. The turn is a 7 now, and I continue for $10. My opponent calls again. I'm assuming he has some like ace high in his range and like some other junk when he just calls and not raises. The river is another 9 pairing the board. Now, my opponent decides to lead for $40. As you can see in the clip, I'm just snap calling with my bottom pair. But why? Let's think for a second. What hand here is calling twice and leading the river? If he had a jack, we'd see raises at some frequency since the pot is rather small, or a lead on the turn. If he had a 9, he would most likely check raise the river given how aggressive I've been, and a straight would like to put more money into the pot when it's drawing. I'm just simply left with his bluffs like ace x that completely whiffed, and if he has any showdown value or pair or some sort, I expect him to check back pure, so his bet here doesn't really make sense at all. The money goes in, my opponent says you're good, and the table is obviously shocked when they see my bottom pair. This is a good one to take down. Next hand, we're in the small blind with ace queen of clubs. The button player raises to $11, and now we're going to go for the 3-bet to 45, given how deep we are with this player. He 4-bets to 120, and I'm going to fold immediately because I feel this player is going to be very tight here in the small stakes game, but turns out he has pocket 7s, so I'm making the adjustment for the next time that if I'm in a spot like this with this exact villain, I'm going to be calling more often. We have ace 8 off next hand, the $5 straddle's on, undergun player limps, and we raise to $25. We get calls from the big blind and early position player. We have the ultimate position over these opponents, and the board is king 5-6 rainbow, Usually, this board's going to be good for me, but I don't want to bet my specific hand into 2 players because they will raise a lot with their straight draws and they also have 2 pairs and some sets in their range. The turn is a 7, bringing an open-ender straight draw for us. The action checks to me again, but this time I'm not checking it all back. I go for a small bet of 20 with the intentions to get calls from middling pair type of hands, which I can really blast any river for either value as a bluff. Early position player calls and we go to river, which is a 4, giving us the nuts. Well, not the nuts, but effective nuts. The plan doesn't change and we blast this river to get a call from a top pair or like a non-believing 1 pair type of hand, but we see the immediate fold and we take this one down. We're now on the button with Jack 6 of spades. I forgot to show our hand to the camera, by the way. We're on the button and I'm opening pretty much any 2 suited cards from the button, so I raise to $10. We get 2 callers from the big blind and 1 early position limper. The board comes 9, 7, 6, 2 clubs. Big blind checks and EP limper leads for 15. I don't think this is ever strong when he leads like this. He's not going to have really nutted hands because those hands would go for a check raise. So I believe he likely has 2 overs, middle pair, some sort of pocket pair that I can blow him off of. I put in the call and big blind comes along as well. The turn is the queen of clubs. The EP limper keeps betting this time for $25. Based on my analysis of him being super weak here and leading twice, I'm going to put in a big raise because when is this a bluff, right? When I put this raise right here. I bump things up to 100 and big blind gets out of the way. The early position player thinks for a while and you can see him smiling, so he thinks he's caught and he folds his hand. He flashes pocket tens and it's great to see our analysis was accurate about him not having super nutted hands, and I'm really glad I played this hand this way. Let me know in the comments what you think about this line I took, because this is one of the occasional lines I sometimes like taking, but it's really hard to execute. Next hand is a pineapple hand where everyone is dealt 3 cards and discard 1, so we discard the 6 to be left with king jack off. Early position player is going to raise to 10 and I will just make the call. The button player is going to come along as well and we go to a flop of king 6-9, 2 hearts. The initial raiser now leads 25. Obviously with my top pair, I'm not going anywhere. The button player gets out of the way. The turn is the 9 of diamonds, pairing the board. The initial raiser now bets 100. He doesn't have much more behind, he has about 150. But this is a pineapple hand and he's going to have a lot of ace king, aces, kings, or simply just hands that have us dominated. But this is the exact same player who 4-bet us with pocket 7s earlier when we folded ace queen of clubs, and we said we'd make some adjustment against him, assuming he bluffs more often than normal. I'm going to think for a bit and just call. River is the 5 of diamonds, completing the backdoor flush. Villain now goes all in for about 120. When he only has 120, I do not really think this is ever a bluff. But if he had ace king or kings, like, I'm assuming he'd be more passive and try to bloat the pot somehow. I don't know. I want to stick to my adjustment and my read. I understand many people watching this would snap call this with top pair, but remember this is a 1-2 game with super type players, so my hand is just a bluff catcher. I just close my eyes and trust to read that he might be betting super light into me, assuming I bluff too much, and just call. I announce I have a king with a scared face and he immediately mucks his cards. Thank God, that was an awesome read. This is why you need to make adjustments based on your live reads and your opponent's actions, ladies and gents. I'm really proud of myself on this one. The chips move our way. Look at this gorgeous stack that's in front of us now as we look at ace 10 off from the small blind. Middle position player raises to 10 and there's a caller, and now the button 3 bets to 40. I think the button player is super light here almost always, so I could call. Now, I really wouldn't recommend doing this at any game, but against a specific opponents that 3-betting on the button, this is what I'm going to be doing, because he'd do this with a lot of worse hands, and I know he'll keep barreling for most of his holdings after the flop, and I don't really want to 4-bet here and get jammed on with a better hand. When he bluffs more often with hands like ace 8 suited or like king jack suited, we can just keep calling post flop to get max value against this opponent. The cutoff also comes along. Flop is 6, 8, 10 rainbow. The action checks around, and now the turn is a 9. I'm going to lead for 50 here, and now the cutoff immediately goes all in for about 150. The button player folds, and the action is back to me. It's sort of a decision because he's not jamming with anything worse than what I have here, right? So I reluctantly let her hand go, and the villain shows King 10. Oh wow, like very big props to him. I did not know that he was capable of turning his top pair into a bluff in this exact spot, so I will have my adjustments accordingly against a specific player as well. We're now in the small blind with ace 3 of clubs. Action limps around to me. I go to a size of 20. Early position player calls. The flop comes king 3-5 with 2 clubs. I check and my opponent checks back. The turn is the 5 of diamonds. No more checking this time, so I go for a bet of 25. My opponent quickly puts in the call. The river is the 8 of clubs, and it now gives me the absolute nuts. Of course, we're loving our spot. The player I'm playing against calls too much and checks back strong hands, so I'm going to go big for value because he can easily have a king here based on how he plays and based on my read on him, so I don't think he's folding to any sides if he does have that queen. I put him all in for about 100 effective. We get a very quick call, and of course, he shows the king. I table the nuts to win all of his stack. I get card dead and bleed very slowly for about 3 hours and down to a $500 stack. I end up folding in so many spots, and now we look down on ace king. I raise things up to 14. The MP player goes all in for about 100. Big blind calls, and I go all in on top of that. Big blind calls again. Let's see the clip.
Okay,
Fair?
just give me 90 here.
Fair?
Yeah,
How big?
I can tell you.
Okay.
It's all in.
Do I have to?
No, you don't have to.
No.
No. And you said one time, so we're gonna run.
One
You
time.
already said one time?
Well, you-
Oh yeah, one time. Fuck it.
All right, one time.
Hero villain.
You got
Ace high.
Nice.
Oh my god, man.
Tens. All right, we're gonna get a smooth triple here.
We end up with ace high, and one player with tens is going to triple up. We kept playing some off camera, and well, this is the session results from that day. A lot of ups and downs, as you can see. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.